coming out of its head.
Great hair or feathers.
Yes, not a toucan.
Quite an expression.
Like a bird of paradise.
Cuckoo. Yeah, cereal was quite a thing back in the day. When I'm saying people of a certain age, that's all we had to read was boxes of cereal and the characters.
I'm amazed at how much cereal cost per weight. You know, when you look at a box of Cheerios, it's like, you know, more expensive than gold. It seems.
Hey, by the way, General Mills has a really cool museum in Battle Creek that's you can go through, and it's very interactive, and they talk about all kinds of cereal and how it was made. Quite a production.
My mom once mentioned to me that if you see any cereal with the phrase puffs on the front, mostly what you're buying is air. Just so you know.
That's right. And if you see honey on the box, that means it's about 80% sugar.
And like today's panel, things may have settled during shipping, so pay no attention to those men behind the panel today.
Wisp was my favorite.
Wisp, the alien?
I always enjoy when I'm at 7,000 feet in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and all of those puff and things like that, the bag are just completely full because they were bagged at a lower altitude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked how Captain Crunch, when you eat them without milk, they would rip up the roof of your mouth.
But you know, Courtney, I'm glad you brought that up. A cold, I mean really cold milk on Captain Crunch is the best taste in the world, without a doubt.
I was always a Raisin Bran fan. As long as it's fresh, there's nothing worse than finding an old box of Raisin Bran where the raisins have turned the consistency of stone agates.
The company I'm working for this summer makes all the effort in the world to feed us, you know, with their cafeteria. But sometimes they forget to refill the milk. And I tell you, having cereal without milk is not very fun.
No, water is not an acceptable substitute at all.
Nor is apple juice. I've tried that.
Yeah, apple juice or orange juice, not good either.
Or when you're pouring the milk into your cereal, it comes out like cottage cheese.
Never tried coffee, maybe.
One more.
They also don't
reminder.
label the chocolate milk and the regular milk. I try not to be frustrated at the actual people that serve the food, but frustration happens.
One more quick reminder, since we're on YouTube now. Anybody that has a question, today is probably your best chance to get an answer of any kind, because this is a very full panel, particularly since a lot of them are guests for our second hour Cinegear coverage. So, got any questions? This is the day to do it. We've got room for them. We got answers.
Thank you, panelists, for all being here. I appreciate it. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. Great to have you here. If you're watching on YouTube, you can always find out more about what we do at officehours.global. Our first hour, every day, a general discussion of production and IT-related topics where we answer your submitted questions. Second hour is typically a deeper dive into a topic, and we're all looking forward to today because today we're going to be discussing our recent Office Hours Cinegear coverage. We did 4 days of live in LA at the equipment show and trade show, and we did I think it was 4 hours of direct live to the air coverage on that Saturday. So we're going to be talking about how it went, how we set it up, and everything about Cinegear happened on the lot at Paramount Studios. So we got to tour around some of old Hollywood's massive sound stages. So it's really fun. But that's in our second hour. For right now, we're going to dive into general Q&A. Mitch, what have we got?
Thanks, Bill. First in, Andre Dole from Berlin. What issues could I run into if I update my M1 MacBook Pro from Monterrey to Ventura for ZoomCuts? I'm using Audio Hijack, NDI, Unity, Zoom ISO, and a lot of different tools.
And Andre Dudley, thank you for the question. Talak is going to start us off today. Talak?
I'm not entirely sure. I haven't actually moved myself. I will be soon. But I know that a bunch of people on the liminal team who we're always constantly testing Zoom ISO, are using it on Ventura with no issues.
Nice. Javier.
I have been using Ventura for, I think, 2 weeks now because I bought an M2 Pro Mac Mini that came with Ventura, so I stick with it and I'm trying everything. And it has been working great. I mean, from those tools, I've been using Unity, and all the Rogue Amoeba tools are working great. I had some hiccups with the continuity, then the camera and the continuity keyboard, and especially the mouse when you try to move it to the iPads. Like some glitches, sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. So that part is still a little finicky, but all the apps that I've run well. So I think go for it and just have a good backup so you can roll back in case something bad happens.
Alex?
Yeah, I upgraded to the Ventura, and then there was a Zoom update, and I haven't gotten Ace to work again. So I just haven't had time, though, I think. But that was the one thing and Ace is the underlying thing for loopback. So it's been a little bit of a, I haven't been able to quite figure out how to get it installed again, and I'm not sure. It could be a variety of things. Obviously, I have a computer with a lot of things on it. So there was a little bit of a glitch there, and so I haven't figured out how to get that. I just keep on failing on the installs. So that's the only thing that I had trouble with that I still haven't really recovered from.
Chris Fenwick.
Pretty sure, Alex, if you launch loopback or hijack and go to update that, it will update Ace for you.
It might be that whole. I have to go through the whole process of installing it back to the. I mean, I have to do the special install of Ace to get it to work again. I can't do it through loopback.
This, ladies and gentlemen, is why we're not doing the audio lab, because Alex is not ill prepared.
It is. It's actually the big delay for the audio lab is me figuring out I have to sit down. I need a couple hours straight to just work on Ace.
I have, to the question, I have Ventura on a bare bones M1 Mac Mini, Studio, Intel iMac. I use loopback of the stuff. I use hijack, loopback. I don't use NDI. I use Unity. I use Zoom ISO, and I'm not having problems with any of them at all. So if you're lucky like me, you won't have problems. If your name is Alex Lindsay, you're in for a world of hurt.
Yeah, I had modest problems, but I've managed to work through them all. So, yeah, sometimes these brand new operating system revs take some time to work out the bugs. Next question.
A fly?
Next question in from Brian Osterhout in Oakland, California. My son, 18, has been asked to create a hype video. It's still unclear if he needs to shoot the video or if a camera or B-roll will be provided. I want him to be prepared. iPhone or GoPro, accessories, tips, or tricks to make this awesome.
Courtney, help us out.
Well, there's a lot of unknowns in your question there. Hype video for what? What's he promoting? What is the target audience? Is it going to be on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram? They all have different formats as far as aspect ratio. So GoPro might be good because it has a good wide angle lens. And I'd just say in general, you could shoot it on an iPhone. I would suggest something more like a DSLR where you have a variety of lenses to get some nice long lens shots where you can compress the background and the foreground together, or make some unique angles or nice close-ups. Get if you have a gimbal for your phone, if you're shooting with a phone or with a camera, smaller camera, that you could use a handheld gimbal to make nice smooth moves, make a lot of dynamic moves, cut those together, find some snappy cleared music to cut it to, and Bob's your uncle. Oh yeah, Bob shoots for you. Yeah. Right.
Alex,
if you can get an SLR, it's definitely, you can shoot a lot of great stuff with it. If it's a hype video for social media, most people are expecting cell phones, and so you can get away with a lot from a cell phone perspective to shoot that, as far as how it looks and so on and so forth. And with the new cinematic modes in the iPhone, they're pretty good if you have a newer iPhone. One thing to think about are rigs. I think that as Courtney said, a stabilizer, DJI makes a great stabilizer that you can use. That's going to get you some nice soft moves. The other thing to think about are hard cases like this. So this is made by Small Rig, and you can put this on. This is a little. There's a lot of attachments. This is just one attachment here that can kind of. This is very adjustable. You can kind of move it around and get things working on it. If you need audio, Ceramonic makes this little guy here that will go lightning in and give you two XLR outs, two XLR ins and then lightning in. So those are some of the things that you might want to think about as far as that goes. The ring lights are actually pretty useful. They're not as useful for our studios, but they're actually pretty common in social media stuff. So we want to think about that as well from a hardware perspective. Larger ring lights are a lot bigger than the smaller ones. And I think that those are some of the key aspects of things that you might need. Probably a tripod to do some of the things that you're doing. Things like time lapse, and time lapse is really useful. One thing, if you want to do something special with time lapse, is don't shoot it at time lapse, shoot it as video, and then take it into something that you can do. You can use the in between frames, and so a program like the easiest one right now is After Effects. Hyperloop will do it as well, but After Effects will let you build what we call time echoes. And that's going to give you long motion blur that is using all the video frames in between each frame that you want to use to build that motion blur. And it's extremely effective at producing something that most people don't know how to do, which makes the hype video stand out.
Chris Fenwick.
So when I have a client come to me and the word hype gets into a description, I realize pretty quickly, I'm sorry, I think my image is delayed. Most videos want to tell a story. A hype video wants to tell a story that's strong on emotion. What I want to do is I want to know what your TRT is going to be. How long is it going to be? You're going to do like a little 1 minute Instagram story, or a 4-minute music video. Find your spine. The spine is the thing that everything hangs on. Hype video, it's probably going to be, as Courtney said, a cool cut of music that you have the ability to use. The specific imagery, in my opinion, the specific shots are nowhere near as important as the overall gestalt or the feeling that is received after watching it all together. This is why I got into post-production. It's the edit, to me, is going to mean much more. I would rather have 30 fun bad shots than one great shot. Okay? Because you can create energy and emotion with bad shots as long as you have a lot of them. Good shots I'm not saying don't shoot good video. I'm saying what you really want is a lot of variety. That being said, you can get away with murder. You can shoot stuff with cell phones. You can shoot stuff with GoPros. You can shoot DSLRs. You can shoot anything you want. You could shoot with a potato. You could shoot a shot with a phone and then shoot that phone from another camera. Boom, bum, bum. And now you have like this inception moment where you can get away with murder. You want a lot of variety and a good spine to hang everything on. That's what I would do.
Alex, you wanted to come back?
The DJI Mini Pro is pretty slick, and so drone shots, time lapse, those types of things are great ways to just, if you're doing a hype video, those things, and drone shots that are doing time lapse, like all of those things. Those are all things that just add a lot of perceived production value.
And for high FOD videos, for me, it's all about energy. So shots that I would throw away for a corporate video are gold for me for high videos. And I try to do them handheld and try to keep things moving as much as possible. I like being off of things, coming onto things, and then going away from things. If you practice and are good at that, so you can actually see what's that shot in the middle, something that swings in, establishes a look at something and then swings away, gives you more energy than just sitting on the thing. So I have fun with hype videos. Those are that's a thing that I just feel like I'm free to go have some fun. Let's go to the next question.
On to Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana, asking, so if 3D video skills are being renewed, what other production skills have waned and then been rejuvenated during your career? Or what older skills would you like to see return to current productions?
Fascinating question. Mitchell, start us off.
Yeah, it's kind of broad in nature, but it also has an arc to it, which is kind of fun. I would say a classic film school lesson would be in order. And the reason for that is that the techniques that you use to shoot a film are still the same, regardless of the technology. So it might be good to do a refresher every now and then to remind yourself what the rules of 6 are and things like that. So that you can do it, because those things still are relevant today, no matter what you're using to shoot.
Tlaloc.
I've built a career off of working at a bunch of different venues with a bunch of different budgets and a bunch of different intentions. And so for me, when I read this question like 3 times before I really understood it, that's a great question. But for me, I need to have a lot of older technologies at hand, because sometimes that's all I can use. I need to be able to understand the most brand new moving lights, the LEDs. I also need to be able to deal with incandescents, and sometimes in the same project. So for me, it's really important to have kind of a sense of the entire arc of the history of the technology that we work with, because sometimes I will end up working with a Klieg light, or something really annoying. The other thing that something that I really would say is the Arduino. That sort of sits in my back pocket sometimes. If I want to build something very, very bespoke, like I at one point wanted to do wireless DMX candles, and the kind of technology that Arduino provides us is great for that kind of thing. It's not something I use every day, but I'll pull it out every once in a while to do something really bespoke.
Alex.
Yeah, and when you say 3D video, I'm assuming you mean stereoscopic. And so for stereoscopic, I'm glad that it seems to coming back, because I put a lot of time into it a couple times now. There's been a couple waves of stereoscopic, and I've gotten to spend a lot of people's money and time figuring out how to do it. So I'm super excited that it's on its way back, coming back around, so I can catch that train again. I think that 3D skills, 360 skills are going to be important as you look at these scenery, and 360 is a little bit of a thing. So you're going to see more of that starting to become more important. And a lot of the last round that we did of this didn't have nearly the set of tools that we have now. Like, we learned a lot, 5 years or maybe 10 years ago, 5 years ago. So we got a lot under our belt to take with that. I think old films, film tricks, I think, are really useful. A lot of the rules that we've had in the past are largely ignored. Jump cuts and jumping the line of direction and how things are framed. I think I really feel like I have to keep watching YouTube and watching TikTok to kind of keep up with the kids. Less than taking old school lessons, I have to take new school lessons. So I look at TikTok a couple, solid 15, 20 minutes a day. And a lot of it's me tracking what is going on. Like, you just can't, if you're going to do production for this, you can't not know what that is, and I think that's why a lot of headsets are going to get sold. Apple will sell as many headsets as they can make, because there's a lot of people like me that have to figure out how to make content for it. And so just us will buy the first year of headsets, of just people just trying to figure out what's what. So I think that I'm really excited about interfaces. I do think that I'm going to probably start spending more dedicated time programming. I've done little bits and bobs of programming, But we'll probably try to find ways to do classes and some labs and some second hours on probably the iOS, Mac OS, Vision OS kind of programming, just getting off the ground within the group, because I think that it will really help to be able to cobble something together. Like just it's not, I'm going to build the final app that's going to be there, but I feel like what I need to be able to do is sit down and write something that I can throw a scene together, put some windows up and make it work without having to talk to anybody else about it and fiddle with it a little bit, just to know what it takes to do it.
Courtney?
Oh, I've seen 3D come and go 4 times now in my lifetime. And if you look away and look back, it's going to be gone again. So I wouldn't load up on 3D equipment again just because somebody's releasing some ski goggles that can generate 3D. I'd say I like the older production values, the old movies that are storyboarded and have a single camera to shoot it, and it follows the action through the scene, and its perspective changes as the actors move around the set. So the director comes to the set, he looks at all the angles that he can shoot, decides where to put the actors and what's their motivation for moving around the room, and so he can recompose a single shot and follow it, like a oneer is called. Those are nice to see in movies. I hate quick cutting and action cutting and the effects of multi-camera, the effects that multi-camera has brought to the film industry for the dramatic narrative, where we've got 3 cameras because they're so cheap, let's use them. And so you end up with shots that you can't really utilize because the camera B can't be in camera A shot, and so on. So it makes a lot of compromises. Compromises are made on lighting because of that, shooting multi-camera, because you can light it great for camera A, but the lighting looks crummy on camera B because they're off to the wrong side or they're shooting the wrong direction, etc. So I'd like to go back to single camera, film maybe, but not necessarily. We really don't need to go back to film. Some directors think they do, but they really don't. It just makes things harder. And the ability to block the scene correctly and, make the camera movements motivated and not just, manic. Get rid of shaky cam. I never want to see another shaky cam movie.
All right, next question.
Gordon Lake from Los Angeles, California questions, how many bots should you have for a remote production show to deploy screens like meters, multi-views, programs, etc.?
Bots. Tlaloc.
So I was thinking back on working on working with Tony on conversations with Tony Mobley. And to this day, the thing we're missing is a meter spot. And so I would say if you're doing a really simple show on Zoom, or even just a simple meeting, meters.
There you go, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things that we could put up there. So meters, also level history is really useful. I know that Juan C. Robles is working on some of those things now. So those, I think these heads up, we have a slate that tells us what's going on, who's doing what for the show, which I think is very valuable. So you have the meters there, the history. I think that there's announcements, so things that tell us that are happening, and timing that we could put up as well. So those are some of the things I would eventually put scopes in there, so we can see we can even see scopes for every person going by or the program going by. That's kind of helpful for us by putting those things in. It's not that a lot of us can't have scopes on our own, but by putting it into the system, it would allow us to essentially not everybody has to have that. By putting scopes in and just saying this is the program scopes going out, anybody joining can see what their scopes look like without having to buy them or set them up or manage them. So I think that those are some of the things we're thinking about.
Next question.
Kyle Hammond from Chicago, Illinois. Is there a future-proof reason to get the Apple Watch 8 instead of the SE or 7? Is there a feature that might roll out in the future, updates that are only possible with the 8?
Alex, your thoughts?
We're too close to the release of the next watch. Do not buy one right now. That's what I would say, is that the next watch will come out typically with the iPhone. So the next watch is in September. Once you get past 6 months before, in my opinion, you shouldn't buy a new Apple product when you know when they're going to be released. there's probably going to be significant upgrades to the next watch, and so I'd probably wait for one more pass.
Chris Fenwick.
I wanted to show you this real quick. If people don't know about this, they really should. I'm trying to frame a screen here for you. It's on the Mac Rumors website. There's a tab over here called Buyer's Guide. And if you click on this Buyer's Guide thing, it takes you through all the different types of products. So there's Macs and phones and Bears Oh My. So if you click on, say, Macs, and then you come down here and it says, okay, the Mac Pro is a buy now. This has the days since the last release. It gives you the average number of days between releases and when those actual releases were. And you can see here was the big one. The 2013 took 2,100 days before a release. And if you go back up here and you go to your phones, or no, you were asking about watches, boom. So there's the thing about watches and TVs and stuff, and you can see how long it's been. It's a great way to sort of gauge, because it'll say, caution, don't buy. Something might be on the horizon, or if it's green, it just means, yeah, it's relatively new product. It's a good time to buy it. So
what does it say now about the watch?
Let's see. It says, approaching end of cycle.
Yeah.
So there you go. It's a caution, approaching end of cycle. I will say that when the Mac Pro was at 2,100 days, I think it was flashing red, like absolutely don't buy. But yeah, it's a great way to kind of get and here's the thing. If you need something and it's going to make you money, buy it. If you want something, it's a good idea to check this first.
Yeah, and I would say that, one of the things, the watches are moving more and more constantly toward the health area. Apple has spent a lot of investment in that. And so whether it does the next monitoring thing, that's something I always keep my eyes on. If you're in a category where you need blood pressure monitoring or you need EKG or whatever it is they're going to eventually come up with, you would feel bad about buying one before it had something that you felt you needed. Courtney, you had a thought.
Down to the line of everything old is new again. The next Apple Watch is going to be a sundial on your wrist with a compass built in, so you can just orient it the right direction and then tell what time it is. Requires no batteries at all.
Auto compassing.
Million-day life. Don't ever have to recharge.
David Paskin, bring us back to reality here.
Oh, no chance of that. I have not. This is the one Apple product I haven't gotten, and I think that I'm hesitated because I'm a big blob of never get out of my chair and do any exercise. And it feels to me, like was just said, that this Apple Watches, or Apple Watches in general, are really focused on fitness. Can someone convince me that I need this if I'm never going to use the fitness pieces of it?
Yeah, it is basically just a computer on your wrist. So fitness is one of the areas where it excels because they put a lot of effort into that. But it's not the only one. I mean, I think the interconnection between your phone and your watch, I'm often driving and I will feel a little tap on my watch and I'll look down and I have some alerts set and it'll tell me that someone has called me. And so maybe it's the time to pull off the road and determine whether or not to return that call. There's a whole bunch of interactive features like that. If you're in the Apple ecosystem, it is beautifully plumbed into the whole Apple ecosystem for you. Chris, you had other thoughts?
Yeah, David, just say no. It's okay. You don't have to own that was the most, dare I say, pathetic. Like, please tell me why I need to buy it. You don't need to buy it. If you've lived this long without the watch, you probably saved the money. You don't need to buy it. You have a religion. That should be your religion. Yeah. Apple should not be your religion. I think walk away from the Apple store.
I think for me, the main thing is that while I don't use most of the features that the watch has, I would never go back to another watch, and I would never not have a watch. So it's one of those things that it's one of those. Yeah, I know, but for me, I use the timer probably more than anything else. I just use the timer all the time. Yeah, but I have to carry I have this little thing on my hand that I can do this without my phone. I can walk around with it. I buy things with it. I use Apple Pay, with it. I can do things like if I turn off my, if I turn off all my lights like this, I can go onto my watch and go, I just want to run lights up. And it will hopefully turn it all back on. Or this is going to look really bad. Yes, there we go. So so when I walk into my office, I just tap on my watch, and it all turns back on again. So anyway, so there's a lot of those kinds of things that it ties enough. It's not that it's the best thing in the world. It ties enough together that it would be very hard for me to give up at this point. And just say no. Just so you know. But again, I would say that it because I had pretty good watches before, not nearly as expensive as the watch that I have now. And I used those up a lot. Citizen, Navahawks and stuff like that. And this one is, I use it all day, and it definitely feels like something's missing when the battery runs out. So I keep it charged every morning while we're doing the show. I usually have it charging to make sure that never happens.
Greta will give you the last word.
David, I'm just like you. I'm all things Apple, and I've not bought the watch until they have glucose monitoring on the watch. Then it will be super useful.
There you go. All right, next question.
From Liberty White in Atlanta, Georgia, Liberty asked, there are reports that LinkedIn is going to test ads during streams. What are your thoughts?
Alex, start us off.
It'd be great if they made the stream better before they started putting ads into it. I mean, I'm just like, it feels like someone like hacked in a MVP into LinkedIn. And it has been this way now for how many years? 8 years, or 7 years. And there just has been so little progress in the platform. And now they're going to put ads into it. And I don't know how many people are actually watching. Like they took the viewership out. Like you can't see now people are doing lives and there's no like how many people are watching anymore because I don't know. Sure. But I guess I feel like you'd want to polish the product before you put ads into it. That's my only 2 cents. I just see a lot of, I'm interested in LinkedIn. I think it's potentially a great market to stream into. And I keep on feeling like eventually it will look nicer. And I just haven't seen them turn that corner.
Mitchell?
Yeah, I agree with Alex. What I need, another distraction while I'm trying to figure out what somebody's saying on LinkedIn. Somebody could be on a roll of saying, the meaning of life, the universe, and everything is. And here comes the ad for, ShamWow.
Courtney?
I think it's just another reason not to join LinkedIn. I opted out of LinkedIn very early on when I found out it was so needy, and I'd keep getting 23 emails a day popping up. So-and-so LinkedIn wants you to join their circle. So-and-so LinkedIn. I just went uninstall, and I haven't gone back.
David Paskin.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all because it's similar, I think, to Courtney. All I get from LinkedIn is ads. It feels like all I get is companies cash in when they pay better. Here's why. What does it take to feel? I mean, I didn't ask to see these things, and that's all I get in my feed. So now maybe that's user error. Maybe I haven't set up my feed correctly, but the user experience is for me has been filled with that, so I'm not surprised.
Alex, you want to return?
Yeah, I will say that I do think that LinkedIn for me is the most useful social network that I'm on. I've probably connected to 4,000 people, and there's kind of a constant flow of information. It's how I can contact almost anybody I need to in the industry at this point. And so, a lot of people are pretty aggressive. Like if you're in what I do, you get into a meeting, and by the end of the meeting, you've been sent invites from like half the people in the meeting. That's that. I mean, people who know what they're. So if and I usually accept all of those, and I don't reach out that often to connect to folks. I do a couple of times every once in a while, but I find it to be super useful. For me. So I think that LinkedIn is great. I've been using it since almost day one, not quite day one, but pretty early on. So I've been doing it for a long time, and it definitely. If you nurture it like anything else, if you nurture your existence there, you definitely get a lot of people connecting to you, and a lot of opportunities show up because you're very highly rated and you're very this and you're very that. But it takes years. It's not something you turn on. Most things that are valuable are not things you turn on and then they work. I've spent the last probably nearly 20 years, on LinkedIn, just kind of not really focusing on it, but definitely paying attention to it.
And that moves us to the next question.
From Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Paul asking, Zoom can now give you AI summaries of the meetings you've missed. Meeting host can send summaries to users through email or Zoom team chat. Comments?
Start with David Paskin.
We looked at this a little bit on the Zoom test kitchen this past Friday. I am afraid to turn it on because I'm concerned that I'm going to really like it, and it's eventually going to become a paid feature. And I'm not sure that I want to fall in love with something that I know I'm going to have to pay for. I will say 2 comments. One is the predecessor to this, I believe sort of the predecessor, which was kind of the smart recordings or the smart transcriptions, where it would automatically give you chapters and you could jump around to things and search the transcription, bring it to the video, to that spot in the video. I was really impressed with that. It was a really nice experience. The second thing I'll say, though, is that the whole sending summaries to users or next steps, my one concern about that is that I don't like anyone to automatically send anything. I want to see what's going out, be able to edit it, and then press the yes, please send this button. So as long as that safeguard is in there, it's a very compelling product, I think.
Javier.
Yeah, I think it's it could be very helpful to have like something like in every meeting that's catching all like what everyone says, because sometimes when you are in a meeting, you say something, and then when you try to recall it, different people in the meeting like got it different. And if you can have like this, no, you said this because of this, like all of that context, and sometimes you can set someone to take notes in the meeting, but it's like very common that the one that's taking the notes is the bottom of the food chain, that's someone that doesn't have any context from the other projects and anything. So if you have like this entity that sits in every meeting and has context of everything that's going around in your organization or your team and everything, I think you can do better summaries. I'm agree with David. Like nothing should be like automated, like send this and get this, but like someone has to filter it. But like having like an, let's say, intelligent entity that's listening to everything and like organizing and can have like give more context. Because if you receive the summary, if you didn't attend the meeting and you just get the summary and you just get the bullet points, you won't get anything. But if you can like ask the AI, like, okay, why did they tell it? Where are we coming from this? How is it related to this other thing that we say in last week's meeting? I think that's where the strength gets. But I think that's for sure is going to be a paid service.
Tlaloc and Rane are just in hold for just a second, so I can tell you, don't forget, you can still continue to ask questions and vote on those questions in the back end. That's what drives the show, so please do so. So now, Tlaloc.
Yeah, I think this is a super interesting product. I haven't heard or spoken with anybody who's actually tried it or used it. So I'm excited to hear what folks find about it. I think that it is important to realize that it is a large learning model, is AI, according to the paperwork there. And you've got to be cautious about how it's being utilized and what is your meeting about and where is that information going. So just keep that in mind. And but I think it would be really, really interesting to figure out if there was a way for all of us to, or the test kitchen, to really take it for a test spin and kind of get a sense of what it does and whether or not it could be helpful in particular situations.
Ronnie.
Yeah, and also if it's multi-language, that would be really nice to know from us people coming from other non-English speaking countries. So test kitchen, really good idea.
Courtney.
I think this is a great idea, especially since a lot of meetings are moving to the hybrid version, like union meetings or corporate meetings, annual meetings that used to be conducted in person, shareholder meetings. They used to be conducted in person, are now open to Zoom. We'll have a Zoom part of them. And so it would be nice if this AI could generate what used to be done by the recording secretary, who used to record the minutes of a meeting and used to be able to get the minutes, which is a summary of all the salient points and things that were passed during the meeting. And if it could do that and eliminate the recording secretary and give you a very cogent summary of everything important that was discussed and the order in which it was discussed and who brought it up and who answered it, and who voted on it, et cetera. That would be very handy to have. So I see it as a good thing.
Let's go to the next question.
From Tim Holm in San Lorenzo, California. One of my primary roles is to recruit and train volunteers for our house of worship. Do you have a YouTube video that you would recommend that is a level 1 beginner primer for a camera operator, not camera controls, but focus on composition?
Alex.
Yeah, so there's a church that does these, and I just I couldn't find it. I was trying to search for it on YouTube. They do these really high quality training, and it's obviously designed for their volunteers. So they put these up, and they're super high quality. They're about like how to use a carbonite switcher and how to use this and how to do that. And I just I'll try to find it and post it in the link, but they put a lot of effort into it. And so that might be one to look for. The main things that what really drives camera operators to do well is a strong TD and just having them do it. And so there's a couple things that I tell people is, when I say nose room, it means you need to have more room in front of the person's face than behind it. So don't center them, always have them a little on 1/3 or another when you're doing it, unless it's straight on. I want a little bit of nose room. So I want their head to be in one side of the frame, not all the way to side, but just on that line. So I explain that's what I'm looking for. I explain what a head and shoulder shot is. I explain what a waist up shot is. And I explain what a wide shot is. And then I mostly tell them that I'm going to then drive you to get things done. And so and I teach a lot of people how to do this. And I'll sit there and TD the first, couple hours. And I'll be like, camera one, I need you to get closer. Move. Now give me some more headroom. Okay, hold that shot. Ready, camera one, go camera one, not camera two. And it's slow. It feels slow as you do it. And what you do is you do that during rehearsals. You do that during other things where you get them used to, like, this is what I'm going to ask you for. And this is, and I have found that I can have them watch a bunch of videos, but it's not going to replace it. The videos make very little difference. Like they can watch the videos, but until they're on that camera, and they're being pushed to perform at an event, at a house of worship, at any place that I've gone to train people to do it. The best thing to do is get some people up on stage, get some people sitting around in the crowd, and get them to hunt the way that they need to hunt, because a lot of it's muscle memory. They have to learn that, on this camera, when I go this way, it's going to focus in. When I go this way, it's going to focus out. When they'll start to feel that camera, or if they have controllers, which is even better. But the point is that it's muscle memory. So much of it's muscle memory of what they're doing. And you can have them watch a video, but the best thing to do is just get them behind cameras and get them moving, and I find that I can get someone, I've gotten folks to produce shows that are pretty close to anything else I've seen in a corporate event with 4 hours of training, it's 4 hours of prep, and just pushing hard, on them to do that. It's really good if the TD isn't in the same room as they are. So I can be forceful. Go. Like, I need you to get here. I need you to get here. Move over here. That's the thing you want to think about. But it doesn't take much if someone, and then they get a lot better after that. It's not how it ends. It's just where it begins.
Next question.
From David Paskin in Miami, Florida. David asks, what is the benefit to having integrated PCI cards like on the Mac Pro as opposed to using a Sonic box?
Mitch is going to start us off here. Mitch?
Speed can be a difference. For example, if you have one of the newer optimized SSD PCIe cards in the new MacBook Pro, it's going to be faster plugged into the Mac Pro than it will be going through a Sonnet box and then over Thunderbolt to make its thing happen. But the other thing is that I think less points of failure would be my vote. If you need more than a couple of cards instead of having multiple Sonnet boxes to deal with, it's all kind of neat and tidy if you can do it inside of your Mac Pro.
Alex Lindsay.
The main thing is that you have a lot more bandwidth, so you're going to have, you can now put in those two cards. Right now we take up, two, if I'm doing if on my studio, I've got 2 lanes, right? And so now I'm going to take up both those lanes for if I want 16 outputs. In this case, I can just put 2 cards in, and I still have 8 lanes left over in the Mac Pro to do whatever else I wanted to do. I still have 4 more card slots. And so, if we start to harangue Zoom, I don't know if we know anybody at Zoom, but if we start haranguing Zoom for 300 megs a second instead of 100 megs a second, then we could theoretically have a box that would generate 48 outputs from those cards. Or we could put those I could put storage in those cards. So if I want to record all that stuff, I could be routing that and putting it in. But you could, and someone's going to go like, why would you need 48 outputs? And the reason you need 48 outputs is if you're doing an event where you're putting a bunch of people on a wall, we can keep on grabbing onto. It could be transformational because you can do more than 48. You could do up to 96 or even 112, I think, is the number that you could if you used up all of those lanes across the top and all of the things. But you'd probably be using some of those for monitors. So like if on a Mac Pro, I'm going to buy a Mac Pro, and it's because I want to push this as far as I can, where I want to see how many can we put in there, but how many monitors can we put out? And so now imagine like Blue Melnick's setup. He has one Mac Pro or two Mac Pros, probably primary and backup, running all of those, all of the screens, and you have Unreal or Unity or whatever flowing people around and moving them and going full screen and moving them in and out and everything else, and having all of that access. Right now, we're still grabbing like whole screens at a time because, we don't have that with Zoom ISO. And so I think that there's a lot of, those are the kind of things that you're gonna be able to do that you can't do right now in the Sonnet boxes. And the Sonnet boxes start to stack up. And it really doesn't actually save you a lot. I mean, the Sonnet boxes, like to have one U, because really you got to get to a point where the boxes are fine, but they're kind of cobbled together. When you're doing production, you want it to all be rack. Like the one that I get, I'm probably going to get a Mac Pro that's rack mountable. Like I just put it into a rack and call it a day, And so, which is what we wanted for, I don't know, since the cheese grater came out, we were like, why can't we make this rack mountable? And some people did. They cut the ears off and just shoved them in. But I think that it's not for everybody. You're 100% right. It's the same power as a Mac Studio. It just has 8 lanes of Thunderbolt and 6 cards. Like that's the only distinction between it and the other one. And for people like me, gold. For almost everybody else, 99% of the world, not useful.
Mitch, you had a quick follow-up?
Yeah, real quick is that some PCI cards require more bandwidth than others, depending on what you're using it for. So if you had a slow PCI card that you were using in a Sonnet box, it probably would serve you fine. But Alex is 100% correct. You need to manage how you spread the load across the whole system.
Next question.
Next question from Eduardo Augustine in Panama. What is the progress in your Telestrator app? I noticed the other day you have an integration with StreamDeck to change colors. This seems amazing. We want to know more.
I think this is for you, Alex.
So close. There's a couple little things that we're still niggling with that poor Juan has to deal with me with it. I just want to fix a couple little things that we have there. But overall, it's really great. I mean, it's just keystrokes. It's not like there's nothing built for the StreamDeck to do this. So you have this, but I can just hit, I just have buttons now that I can, and I've colored the buttons. And so I know what color I'm going to get. And then I can do, thicker and thinner. And so, they're just little buttons that are in there. And so it's working really well. It works really well on the Mac. The iPad one has one little drawing thing that I'm trying to sort out, and I'm super happy with it. It's kind of like a little dream. And as soon as we get this last, I have to admit that I've worked on it for so long, and Juan has done so much good work. I just want to be. There's just a couple little things that I know that I'll be happy if I can just get those things fixed. And so once we get those working, we'll release it. It's very close now though. And Juan's done an incredible job putting it together.
Next question.
Samuel Nordvik in Norway asking, if bandwidth is not an issue, what is the highest bit rate that it makes sense to use for 1080p 60 frames per second streams in YouTube? Any advantages or disadvantages of going over their recommendations?
Ronnie. Oops, you're muted, Ronnie.
I would say the sweet spot going to YouTube for 1080 60 is up to 9 as per recommendations. We normally use around 7.5, and of course, if you're going 4K, you have to increase up to 50. And I've seen no change if we go over. It's useless bandwidth.
Alex? Yeah, I encode the same way for YouTube as I do my top ladder. So if I build HLS ladders myself, so a lot of times for other things that I've done, we build the ladders ourselves. And so we have two 1080p's and a 720p or two, and then a 540, and then a 360, and then a 240. And so I know what I want out of that, and I don't really change the top layer. And for the top layer at 60, at 30, I do 1080p 30. I do six megs a second, so I do 12 for the 60 because it's twice as much bandwidth. And so those are the things that I think of. Now, I don't go much past 15. Now, I'm also oftentimes leaving headroom there for 10-bit HDR, other things that I'm putting into those things, and so I have a little bit of headroom there for that. For 4K. I don't think you get anything above 16 megs a second. I don't think that YouTube doesn't. Remember, it's always transcoding everything. When I do 4K myself, the top ladder is either 24 or 36 megs a second. Like I put a lot of bandwidth. I throw a lot of bandwidth down the path. If you're handling HLS, I've got a bunch of ladders. If you can't handle it, then go back to something. It'll automatically drop down to 16 or 10 or whatever. So I can just give you one. I'm just putting something in the manifest that says, hey, if you can take this, it's going to look awesome. And so at this level, and then I'm going to throw, smaller ones in if your player can't handle it or if your bandwidth can't handle it.
Courtney.
Yeah, I would follow the recommendations, which is for 1080p is 8 megabits per second for 24, 25, or 30 frame rate, and 12 megabits per second for up to 60 frames per second. If you want to have 1080p 60, you can upload 12, because anything above that is just going to be thrown away on the transcode, and it's going to take longer and offer more latency if you're trying to do live streaming.
It won't affect the latency. It doesn't affect the latency, and it also the transcoding does get a little very small. It will get better if it has more bandwidth. We've tested it not by little amounts, but we've gone, hey, I'm going to give you a 12 meg per second 1080p, and I'm going to give you a 30 meg per second 1080p. And the 30 meg will look a little nicer because it gives it more to claw into when it does the transcode. And so it's not, but the ROI is not there. It is right. Better when we're testing it with test signals. So when we're putting ocean waves into it, the 30 down to what YouTube does looks better than the 12 down. So we can see that. But on an average stream, you're 100% correct. The ROI drops off pretty fast.
It also depends on your encoder. If you have a dual pass encoder going up, you can get just as good a quality off the 12 as you could off of a 30 with a crummy decoder. So you have to take that into account. Encoder.
Ronnie, you wanted to come back?
Yeah, it's the same as Courtney just said. Remember to use the correct encoder. It's much more quality to get from changing the encoder from a bad one to a good one than increase the bandwidth.
Let's go to the next question.
Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana, asking, when does technology become a distraction in production? Outside of the crew staring at their phones, is there a big issue?
And we'll start with Tlaloc.
Yes, I think there is a big issue. I think you maybe will hear this as a little bit of a broken record from me, but you got to look at the story and the content first. The technology needs to serve that rather than serving the technology. And I get in trouble with this, there's a brand new thing, we want to use it, let's put it up there, but do we need it, right? And I think let the content drive it, and then let that technology, which there's a lot of, and it's great, but let it serve that.
Javier.
I completely agree with Tlaloc. The biggest problem that I've seen is the misuse or distraction is that trying to do everything. Technology makes it so easy to try different things and do not commit to all of them, and try to put on a screw with a hammer, let's say. You can try every sort of things, and not getting lost where's your true north. That's very important. There are productions where the whole theme of the production is let's try things, with the things we did with the HDR and the 5.1, that there were tests. That was the point of the production. But when the production is this content, this record, this movie, this whatever, this commercial, you have to keep straight and get use the technology that helps you achieve that task and not try a lot of things. So don't get distracted with technology, because we love to do different things, but we have to learn to use them.
Alex.
Yeah. When you talk to people who do, when they're starting out in production, sometimes when they still are doing production, they get really caught up with, let's do the new thing. Let's figure out how to do this. This is really exciting and everything else. Now, you'll see me do a lot of that when I'm doing something that I'm not getting paid for. But anybody who's worked with me, when I get paid, I get super conservative about what I'm doing and will do only things that I think will absolutely work. I don't jump into anything that I can't imagine how it's going to actually work. So I'm very, very careful. And really what I focus on a lot for main events is how people feel. So I'm using technology I want to know, how does the speaker feel? How does the audience feel? How do people feel about the event? And I'm much less worried about what I can do and more about, if I'm getting a new piece of technology, it's because I feel like it's going to make someone else feel better. The speaker is going to have more information. The stream I will tell you something. I'm not trying to put technology into it to add technology. I am trying to tell a story, and I'm using that technology to do that. And when I do that, I fiddle a lot and I practice a lot with it. I don't throw something on I drive people crazy, because someone on the day of the event that they'll think of things that are a better idea, 100% better than what I planned. And I still won't do it. Like I won't, I still I'm just like, that's for the next event, because there's a series of variables that I can't manage in real time, and I can't afford for it to fail.
Next question. I'm sorry. No, let's go down to Courtney and then Ronnie, and then we'll go to the next question. Courtney.
Yeah, technology can be a boon, or it can be a anchor around your neck in production. I've seen a lot of productions come to a halt when they decide to use a robotic camera to do this move, and they do a complex move, and somebody trips over a wire with a custom connector soldered on the end of it. Nobody's got a replacement, and the production shuts down for an hour and a half while somebody has to drive to the camera rental house to get another custom wire to get the production moving again. So things like that you got to watch out for with the high-tech stuff. And a lot of times also, technologies compete with each other. If you put them together for the first time, you may have a camera who has a new camera you're using, and your electronic dimmers on your lights conflict with the shutter on the camera. It doesn't have a global shutter, and so it's creating irregularities or flicker in the image. It can slow you down immensely, and it can take a long time to troubleshoot if you don't have very knowledgeable people about the technology that they're using. So,
Ronnie. Oops, you're muted.
Yeah, try to avoid using new equipment, definitely. And we have a client which always try to focus on the work that has to be done by the people in front of the camera. And they tend to ask us just, can you remove those microphones? The camera you have there is a little bit too big. Can we use a smaller one? So they are very focused on the task being done rather than the technology. So that's also good to think of.
Paulie, can you have a real quick one?
Just coming back real quick to say, also, make sure you can afford the technology you want to try. Because the truth of the matter is, there are lesser expensive pieces of equipment that proclaim to have that particular kind of a technology that don't do it well. So you got to be able to afford the technology that you want to use in a way that will be stable and work.
Next question.
From Henry Ramos in Yonkers, New York. Henry wants to know, how can you check if your USB bus is overloaded? Say testing a capture dongle and a StreamDeck on adjacent ports.
Ronnie?
I'm not sure how you test it. I would love for the panel to pitch in here. But what I've seen is a lot of these chips that are in some of the, especially Ethernet to USB conversions, are really getting hot or problematic when you have used them for some time. So test this only not instantly. You have to test it for a while to see if it is stable.
Underload. Courtney Gooden.
Well, it depends on whether you're talking about overloading the data bus or the power. If you're talking about power, you can get you one of these little meters, which are really great. They just plug in. They have all kinds of USB-C, USB-A, and they don't have a USB-B, but micro C and A inputs on them. And they have a nice little full color meter with a charts and graphs that will chart the power consumption. It'll tell you how many amps are flowing through this and how many it's pulling. And so you can tell whether anything that's connected up to it is charging a battery or just drawing more current than the port can supply. So that's a handy thing to have to concerning whether you're drawing too much power from the port. It won't tell you much about the bandwidth if you're overloading your USB bus, though.
We're getting pretty close to our second hour here, but let's see if we can catch in a couple more questions. Next question.
Talalik Lopez Waterman and Brevard, North Carolina, asking how many USB pipes would actually be too few to get the kind of work we do in production?
Alex.
You can't have enough to do everything you want to do. You always just kind of, it's kind of like you never finish a production. You just run out of time. So in the same case, I fill up all my USBs all the time. And then I just go, oh, now I need to think about what I put on a hub and what I put on something else and everything else. But there's not enough. There's never enough. But I think that I would consider 2 a minimum, to have in a computer, because one's going to be a hub at that point. But I prefer to have as many as I can possibly fit into a computer. I know that right now my Mac Studio has a lot of USB-C and USB-A hubs. I think everything's filled. Like every connection in my Mac Studio except for the card reader has something in it. So I think that's always the trouble.
Let's go to the next question.
Samuel Nordvik in Norway asking, can you explain how shutter angle works related to shutter speed?
Alex.
Yeah, so shutter angle is shutter speed is a hard number, and shutter angle is a percentage of your frame rate. So usually what happens is that a 360 shutter is the same as your frame rate. A 180 is twice your frame rate, or half the time as your frame rate. And so usually you leave it on your shutter angle. You usually leave it on angle because if you're changing frame rate, you want that angle to keep on changing with it. So 360 would be the same. And so if you're doing 60 frames a second and you have a 360 shutter, then you're going to have 60 frames. You're going to have 1/60th of a shutter, and that's going to have more motion blur than we're used to seeing. If you do what we're used to seeing generally is a 180-degree shutter. Now, what we like when you say Saving Private Ryan, it looks a little stuttery. It's because they're using a 90-degree shutter, because that's what was used in World War II. It gives more time for a 90-degree shutter. Gave the film advance more time to get from one place to the other. So in the rugged cameras, it gave it just a little bit more time to work with as it went from one to the next. So they're 90-degree shutters. Now, where it gets complicated is we're going to start throwing away frames. So for instance, when we have someone that we're working with that is shooting, let's say, they might be shooting 60 frames a second, but we're going to stream at 30 because we know that YouTube only streams at 30. We might have 60 frames a second at 360-degree shutter because we're throwing away half the frames. It will be a little bit more motion blurry for 60 frames a second, but at 60 frames a second, almost nobody notices. Same thing with 120. We do 120. We tend to do 360. For some reason, it just looks a little bit better at 120 with a 360 shutter speed than with the 180. Because we have to remember that's kind of arbitrary. It's not like it's our eyes, so you have to figure out what makes sense. And so it also means that we can reinterpolate the frames. We can go from 120 to 24, 30, 60, and reinterpolate those frames without losing, without losing. We're having stuttering in those rebuilt frames.
Talalo. No, I'm sorry. I'm on the wrong place, and this is my mistake. I was trying to get ready for the second hour. Ronnie.
Yeah, and for shooting high frame rates, you should really be aware of having the correct shutter. And we also tend to tell our apprentices to use the shutter angle because, as Alex just said, it follows the frame rate. So if you change frame rates throughout the film session, it will automatically be correct. And please make sure that you have the right one when you are shooting high frame rates.
Courtney?
And if you're shooting film, you can't do a 360-degree shutter. You're probably limited to 72 as the minimum.
So cute.
Sorry, 128, because the film has to be pulled down and registered before the next frame comes out.
How retro.
Let's go to the next question.
I live in a film world.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asking, Moog Music was recently purchased by inMusic, the owner of Akai, Rane, and M Audio. Considering their unique selling point has been U.S. manufacturing and employee ownership, do you think this is a slow death of the brand?
Let's go to Courtney.
Oh, I don't think so. There's a lot of corporate buyouts over the years of specific businesses that have gone on. Panavision is owned by Revlon for God's sake, for a long time. So a lot of companies are owned by just hedge funds, and so you may worry about that. But this particular company of inMusic is their holdings are mainly in the music area, so I think it's a good fit for them. I don't think it's going to mark the end of Moog. And remember, the owners that are still there, the owner operators and the people that are working at Moog are still going to own stock in the new company now. So,
Paula,
real quick, I wanted to say I was driving through Asheville the other day and I saw that there is a Moog museum. So maybe we ought to have a little walkthrough there in after hours and kind of check it out.
It's in Nashville?
No, Asheville.
Oh, Asheville.
Yeah, and I'm literally
Carolina?
40 minutes away from there. So we should do
100%.
that this summer.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Content for the future. Anyway, it is the top of the hour, and we're very excited today because if you've been around office hours long, you know that we go out and do these big trade shows, and we just finished Cinegear as our latest of our trade show adventures. It was major fun. And for those of you who might not be aware of what Cinegear is, once a year in Los Angeles, kind of the movie making and big equipment community comes together. During the pandemic, they were off and then they came back to one of the convention centers. But part of the magic of Cinegear is that it happens on studio lots, particularly the Paramount lot. So this year they were back on the Paramount lot and we got to go out there and see that. So you get to go through the big gates of the Paramount studios and kind of hang out around all this amazing studio circumstances and get to see all the hot gear. They do it both outside. There's a whole set on the Paramount lot that is kind of a Streets in New York thing. All sorts of gear is set up on those streets in these big movie sets. And then there are the big sound stages where there's tons of equipment inside and everybody gets a pass for the lot for the day and we can go around and see it. A lot of us went out there. I was lucky enough to be able to go out on Friday and just kind of hang out on the lot. And then we came back and did the live show here. So today is our day to discuss everything that happened at Cinegear. And I'm going to talk to some of the people, just kind of give the impressions of some of the folks who came in for the panelist part of this. To do that, let's start with Alex. Alex, what were your thoughts after Cinegear this year?
I think that it was a pretty big success for us. We definitely took more ground, as far as figuring it out. I think that the after hours thing is starting to sneak up on being a really interesting platform. Now, I admit that I was doing mostly setup, so I'll be really interested to hear what people felt when they were watching it. But I really felt like it did show the difference between the LiveU that we used the next day and the cell phones that we used the day of the after hours, because it was a lot of 1 frame per second occasionally and things breaking up and everything else. So there were some challenges there. But I really liked the kind of more popcorn effect of having lots of things that we can cover. And I think that as we get better at that, I think that's going to be more. We're definitely going to see more of the of after hours kind of building up to where we can spend days doing that. And then it's all going to culminate in a stream. I think that there's some point where this becomes a thing where there's the after hours is happening for the first day or two, and then it cuts to the stream. And at some point, after hours might be going on at the same time as the stream. There's a lot of different things that could happen there as we become more refined, and as we figure out more of those pieces. But I think that the after hours process went really well. I will say that Cinegear is so dense. You could stop at almost every booth and it would be interesting. Like, that was the thing that was really fascinating about it. I haven't been there for 10 years and the technology has gotten so much better than the last time I was there. Maybe 15 years. I got horribly burned because the problem is it was outside, and I got horribly burned, just sunburned the last time I came. And every time I saw that it was available outside again, all I could think of was getting burned again. And so, I didn't go for years. I was just like, oh, I don't need it. And it often conflicted with a big event in Cupertino that I, so the So I think that I haven't been able to see it for a long time. The technology, because so much of the technology around filmmaking and production has gotten so much better, it has gotten to be just pure eye candy. I mean, there's so many cool things. It's like the central hall in NAB, but that's the whole thing. It's even cooler than the central hall in NAB. So it's just the easiest thing to shoot from a content perspective. It's the hardest one to shoot because it's outdoors. It's outdoors, and then it's in basically Faraday cages, which are the studios. And so it was an extremely challenging place to shoot. If the content wasn't so good, I would never go back. It is such a, I get that it's fun to be on the Paramount lot, but wow, is it hard to shoot, to cover the stuff. And it's, grinding sun and it's LA and, all those things that, parking is a stressful moment. And so all those things, I'd much rather just go to a convention center and watch the things. But what sells it is just the incredible group of people that show up and bring their products. So I'll let some other people talk a little bit and then we'll start showing I'll show a couple slides.
Sure. And our two on-camera hosts for this happen to be with us today, Tlaloc Lopez-Waterman and Courtney Gooden. Courtney started us off by touring us through the back lot. That was fabulous. And then Tlaloc took us inside some of the big sound stages. So they've raised their hands. So Tlaloc, give us your thoughts about it.
Well, I had a lot of fun, Bill, and I really appreciated the opportunity to do it. I thought for sure I was just going to carry batteries, but that's not what happened.
Surprise!
Welcome to office hours.
But I do want to say that I really do. I agree with you, Alex, that the after hours thing is a gem in the rough, and I think it would be really, really cool to get that working better. I don't know how to possibly do that, but to get that to have more frame rate. And then I would also say that I think we should do it in teams. There was one moment where we were all up near a lens company, and I was talking to the people there because I was pretty interested in what I was looking at. And we had multiple cameras in after hours for people to look at the same booth. And it was really fun. It was really, really fun. And I think it would be great to get that working better. And I've been thinking about how to do that. There's probably some physical limitations, but
there's not, we're still figuring it out, we're figuring out how many people can make it make sense and how much coverage. But I think that, I don't think that there's any reason for us to not do those things. I think my goal is always to see how much, can we have 6 things ready to go, but maybe it's just 3 things ready to go. And maybe it's, and again, I think it'll get slowly more organized and so on and so forth. But yeah, I think it was, I really enjoy the organicness of it.
And one of the joys of there, Courtney was one of our on-site reporters from there. And Courtney's been in the industry for so long and knows so many people that it was just fabulous watching him interact with some of these booth vendors. How did it feel for you, Courtney?
Well, we got lucky this time. I've been going to Cinegear for many, many years. And we got lucky this time. The temperature wasn't killer, although the sun did come out in the afternoon, and it made shooting problematic, which we can talk to later on, because going from sunlight to shade and to inside a soundstage where we're shooting LED lights and lighting in booths where the lighting and the f-stop is completely different, moving back and forth. So there were those kind of problems. I think we covered it pretty well, and I got to thank Bill for holding down the fort and Grant for holding down the fort.
Grant did a fabulous job
as the host. So that they would dance while we moved on to the next booth that we were going to shoot. I think a good setup, as Alex said, I think, and Tlaloc said also, that a good setup in the future to look for, to strive for, would be maybe 2 LiveUs with 2 separate crews and 2 cameras locally switched at each crew, sending that back to the mothership, so that we don't have to so Bill doesn't have to do the dance and vamp between the between booths as we move from booth to booth, so that the 2 different booths could cover different, areas in a trade show, for example. You assign one crew to the left half of the hall or a different hall, and this crew to the other hall. And you divide it up so that you can ping pong between the two without having to do too much vamping in between them. And the local person who's running the LiveU could have just a simple ATEM Mini and switch between a close-up camera or a B-roll camera that could be getting inserts or reverses of the host versus the person being interviewed, and switch between them, and that would be fed back to the mothership.
Yeah, I mean, I think
my idea.
I will say that part of the design of it was that not so much vamping, but I mean, and we have to work on this for the show, but it shouldn't be vamping, but adding more context. Like the goal is to breathe a little bit so that we're not going from booth to booth to booth to booth to booth, but we have a little bit of time to talk about what we just saw there. And I think we have to get better about how we do that. But I think that is, the goal there is to have some experts that you get some time to have them interact with that. We had some technical issues that kept us from doing multi-camera, but I would prefer on the ground not to have a switcher and to use 4 inputs. The LiveU that we had, for some technical reasons, we didn't do it, but the LiveU we had is capable of sending 4 feeds back to the mothership. And I'd much rather keep the production on the ground simpler rather than. I mean, I think that one of the things that we did that we'll show in a little bit is we created a wireless camera system completely, so there was nothing coming back, and there's a cart following it around, Courtney's cart, and I think that made a huge difference, is lightening the load of the camera operator, and I think we want to keep on lightening the ground load a little bit to make that actually work.
Mitchell, you had some thoughts?
Yeah, as a viewer, I wasn't a participant. I was very impressed and proud to see that our local presenters on the floor were asking very intelligent questions of the presenters at the show. In fact, you could see their expressions on their faces, like when Courtney was discussing, I think the way to rewrap a boom pole, and Courtney went into great detail about it, and then the person was like, "Wow." Or Talalik was discussing a light instrument and obviously knew what he was talking about. I think those are things where we can shine, not just technically in terms of how we shoot it and how the quality is, but also how we present ourselves when we're out there doing those interviews. As far as the close-ups and separate cameras, that'd be great if you could do that. The only suggestion I would make is that when you begin the dialogue about where you are, which booth you're in, then you should push in on the person at the booth and the equipment. Therefore, it's not a 3-shot with a piece of equipment or product as part of it, but the person that's talking about what it is that we're looking at. You just walk it in. But again, I don't know how easy it was to move that camera around or whether it was on a cart or whatever. So I liked it. It was great. Well done. Well, good job. Well done.
Ronnie, you had some thoughts?
Yep. Multi-camera is really cool. Having some overview and another guy or girl moving in and get a close-ups is really good. But I think it's different when we're doing the broadcast on YouTube and when we're doing after hours. As a panelist, I would really like to have all the angles in, not like a finished cut from the floor. I would like to see all the angles so that I can use that to get the context as a panelist.
I'm not sure what the technical reason was that we did that, because I expected the raw feed to be in there for the panelists to see, and somehow that didn't happen. So we'll make sure that we, and if we're sending 4 feeds back, we'll definitely pump 4 feeds into the all the feeds. If there's like 2 live views with whatever, we'll send all the feeds into Zoom so that you can see everything that's going on. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I saw some frustration in myself when I couldn't look at the close-ups, and we were kind of in the chat and, can we have a close-up? Can we have a close-up? Yeah. And didn't get it. So,
yeah.
Courtney, you had a thought to follow up?
Yeah, I agree with that. I was just going to point out a thing that really saved us on this is to appoint a field producer who goes ahead to the booths that we want to cover and goes to the next booth that we're going to be coming to next, preps the people there, tells them that we're going to be doing a live show and we're going to be coming to them in about 10 minutes, and we're going to let them know when we're live. We'll be set up, and we're so that we don't just arrive at a booth out of the blue and they don't know who we are, what we do, et cetera, et cetera. And so our producers in the field did a great job with that for bringing us from booth to booth and prepping the people in the booth for our arrival. And
Yeah, Raj was sitting there with his. He had an outline of what we were going to do next, and a lot of times we were having to pull things out, put things in, and he was able to really, just kind of keep us guided, where we needed to go. It was amazing.
Having a map was essential because it was so confusing on that back lot, because none of the streets are parallel, so they don't form really a grid. They form triangles and stuff, and it gets repetitive when you get blocked by all the people. So it was essential.
Alex, did you have something specific more than that, or did you want?
Yeah, I was going to show some slides.
Oh, let's we have one person here from the back end crew, Kirsten, had just raised her hand. So Kirsten, how did it go for you?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I hope you can hear me. Yes, I rushed in.
Great. Good to see you.
It went very well, as we are a global crew. So you already heard something from what happened on site. And so there were some people in the backend as well. I would have a little, some pages to show as well, via screen share if I can.
Please do.
So I will just try if it works.
This will be cool. Yeah, go ahead.
Is it fine? Okay.
Yeah, we can see it.
I can't see you anymore. That's live. All right. So you already heard about it because I was listening while I came back here. So we did some streams into AfterHours. The other panelists already talked about this. So that was really great, because what happened in AfterHours was that we were then able to see about 40 booths already on the Friday before we had the big show. So we had a prepared list of 50 plus names with all the exhibitors. And what was really cool was that then in AfterHours on the Friday, we were really live able to vote in Mokana about all these booths we already saw. And some of the things were so exciting that we said, we would like to see more of this tomorrow. So all this voting we did in AfterHours was then the basic, so to speak, for the run of show, which was then made during the evening for the next morning. And then we had on Saturday, we had our Cinegear show. You already heard from Field Team, and there are some people here who will share more about this. So we had the Field Team, the panel, and the production crew, and the 4 hours YouTube stream. That's where I was in the back end with 2 other TDs, and a lot of other people from the crew. So what happened in pre-production? We were having a little sprint of 2 weeks this time, with an all-hands meeting, field team meeting, EIC, and so on. And so some key things. This is not everything, but without this, it wouldn't work. Is really the communication, the logistics, having all the roles set up, having the field kit. Then we are all connected on comms, everyone who is on site, also the panel, the back end, and so on. That's how we run it. And that was the key takeaways from me, as I did some understudy in the pre-production and then was in the back end later.
So when you watch the show, sometimes you don't get a sense of how much complexity there is in the back end, how many people are working, and what they're doing to make this all come alive. And it was great to hear from that. We're going to go to Alex now. And Alex, you have your presentation?
Yeah, and I'm just going to show some slides from the ground. But one thing to point out is I think that Tlala can tell us I think that we take things for granted that kind of blow people's minds. I think there was Tlala. What was the situation with the A1? Was it in Chimera?
So I was at Chimera, and I was like, so we're working on making sure that sound is happening, and I really loved when we got somewhere to just have 30 to 60 seconds to just kind of talk with the person about what we're doing and what's going to happen, and sort of waiting for the call that we were live, and then we would go. It's a little longer on Chimera, and I said, we're working on making sure the sound is working, and he's like, where's your A1? And I was like, oh, Manila. And he just went blank.
I don't know what to do with that,
and then he recomposed himself and said, oh, that's cool.
And it's funny because it's every once in a while we just don't think about it, and having Richard available, Brian Richard Levery and Brian Chand and Grant coming in, and it really what I was struck with during that day was how seamlessly we've become global. It's not just that we're we're talking about it, we really are doing things that are very, we don't think anything about it. And I'm on comms and Mickey's telling me I got to do something, or someone else is, so Mickey's like going, I need you to do this or to do that or whatever. And we're just kind of figuring it out together. And so we had, between Manila and Australia and Ireland and all the different, in Germany, and all these different folks that are all on the back end making this all work. And we are covering it at a level that no one else is covering it live. I think while we're still in our, what I would consider our infant stage of doing this coverage, it's at a whole different level. Like, it is not like nobody else is doing this kind of live coverage right now from those areas. If you do Cinegear coverage in Google, just Google Cinegear coverage and see how high we end up on that list. It's for at least last week, it was at the top, and so I think that we're gonna I still feel like things are pretty rough. We're still figuring a bunch of pieces out, but I think that we're already doing pretty well. Let me
it shocks me so much to think. I just think of it as Kirsten. It's Kirsten Osterkamp, and then I go, she's in Germany, and right. Ronnie's in everybody is just all over the world, but it seems like such a community, and it is so cohesive, and there's such great people.
So so here's a couple slides here. This was at Jesse's house. Jesse wasn't very far away; it's closer than I was staying, and Jesse had a great spot to kind of build up in and figure it out. So it was very comfortable. So I was going to test this camera, but we didn't end up testing it. This was the Blackmagic camera. We just ended up sticking with it. Now I brought I'll show you another one. This is the Sony FX30. The reason we didn't use it was because of the lens. And I just didn't, once we did the test shooting on the day before, I didn't feel like we were going to get, I felt like it was too long. It was 35 millimeter. I think with Jesse's, we ended up being a 16 millimeter, I think, or 24, I think, a 24 on a...
Yeah, it was 2450, but we kept it on
2450. And even that was probably a little longer than we wanted, but the 35 was 35 on a Super 35 was definitely not going to work. Like, it was way too long. And I did some research. I was trying to find a wire lens, and Jesse had a great camera. So I figured we'll just use his camera instead of mine. There's the LiveU setup. I finally got at NAB, the little things at NAB, we had just a backpack, that the Scorpio was in, which is a little embarrassing given it's a $10,000 mixer, to have it just kind of shoved into a bag, and it was very ergonomically super painful to wear both of those things together. And so I got this is a K-Tech bag for the Scorpio. And what's really nice about it is that everything opens on every side. Like, I can open things, get everything to it. One thing that I have ordered that showed up today for this weekend is when you put it in the bag, you realize why there's right angle XLRs. Everything's sticking out. So I ordered a bunch of right angles for this weekend. But this bag is great because it was able to hold the embedder as well as the wireless. So that worked out well. This is the Scorpio, and we could do a lot with less than that if we wanted to. The main advantage of the Scorpio was that we were able to do the 5.1. We had a lot of control over the mixing, and it's got great preamps. This is the camera setup. You'll see another couple angles of this, but this was at that. We did find a slight tangent is that it's nice to know where we can kind of meet and kit up. In this case, Astroburger was only a block away from the entrance, and so we all met at Astroburger, and we weren't, because everybody was there for the conference. It wasn't weird for us to pull out a camera and start setting it up and talk about it there because it was there. So what you see here is it's a V-mount battery that we had here, and this is a Ranger. So the Ranger is a very high quality broadcast level transmitter by Teradek. And so this is the Ranger here that was our wireless video. And then we have this brick, and this brick powered the Ranger, and also powered, I believe, it powered something else here. Oh, I think the monitor down here. And so it's got a couple different outputs there. So DTAP to the Ranger was what we used there. DTAP to a 2-pin, which I think turned into a little bit of a drama because Tlaloc had to go find it. So we were like, so to make that actually work. There's Courtney. They wouldn't let us in the easy way, so we had to walk like 10 miles to get to the part that we needed to get to. And Courtney Courtney brought this little cart, which I looked at it and I was like, I don't know if we need the cart. That's when I looked at that. And I thought that for about 10 seconds, and then we started putting stuff on it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe. Why did I not think about having a cart? So because I was thinking, we'll carry it around, or I was thinking I should have gotten the back brace that you get with the bag, and that would have never worked. So anyway, so carts are now the thing, but the key is that nothing was wired to the cart, and we didn't have to. The camera could move wherever it wanted to. So the cart's like hidden here by having the camera. Here you can see Joaquin Joaquin is here, and he has his own backpack, but nothing's connected to that. So everything is wireless. We're using electrosonic wireless, and a couple little hits here and there. But you got to understand, this is incredible. Like most of the other transmitters that we would have had would have just ripped apart at this event. There is so much wireless going on and so many things going on. I can't believe we even had any clean audio at all. But we had, so we're using, these are just SM58s along with the mic plugs. And then anyway, so then here are the top, these are the receivers for the thair decks, that we have here. You can see another angle here. And so this cart we were able to just kind of push around. We kind of used it as part of the block. You'll notice there's a lot of open space here. And this is because we have people here. We didn't have anybody here, but they were talking here. We built basically with everybody that was working, we kind of built a little bubble. And so every time we went somewhere, everyone kind of took a place and formed a bubble around what we were doing. And our guys were pretty aggressive. nice, but aggressive. Like, no, you need to move around. And I'm always amazed. There's always a couple people that just decide that no one's going to tell them what to do, and they're going to walk through the camera. And I'm always like, wonder what you are like in production. Like to say that we're shooting and all you have to do is walk this way instead of through here. But there's always that person that does that. And you're just like, wow, I'll never want to work with you. Anyway, so so here we have, I thought this was pretty cool. And one of the things that really worked in a lot of ways was that, again, Courtney and Tlaloc really knew their subjects. So what they were talking about. And I don't think that our guest here, this is an ETC, Tlaloc was like really asking him deep questions. Like it's obvious that Tlaloc knew what the board does. And so I think it was really comforting for him. But you can see the kit kind of moving around here. Here you can see we did find that we got in all this coverage here. We did find that moving these electrodes up a little bit higher, getting those things, we're probably going to put these on a pole the next time, just get them up even away from our hardware to make it even easier. But these worked great. And then you see the LiveU here. And then what was happening here is that we were embedding the audio. The audio is coming out of AES, out of the Scorpio, and then being embedded by a Blackmagic little box audio to SDI. And we could do that. We could use that box for both just using 2 mics, but we could also put 6 mics in if we want to do 5.1, which we did a little bit later. Here's another shot of the camera. So you can kind of see it's relatively light. So it wasn't something that became a big. That's what was great about taking away the backpack and everything else, that the camera was able to move around very, very easily. And we used a monopod here, which worked out exceptionally well. I think this was Tlaloc's monopod. Who makes that? Tlaloc? Do you remember?
It's a Manfrotto.
No, mine was a Manfrotto.
Oh, was it?
Tlaloc's
Okay.
was.
I think it's called McCam. It was like $129. It was
better. I have a $500 Manfrotto that I brought to use, and we ended up using Tlaloc's because the feet were bigger. So the feet were just a little bit bigger. It was a little bit more stable to work with. So that was the big reason we chose that. Here again, you can see, Tlaloc asking questions and us putting this in a place where we get line of sight to our folks talking, but also we're blocking this. A lot of it was paying attention to blocking any kind of side traffic that may occur, in that process. And so those are a couple of behind the scenes photos of what the on the site crew looked like, and I think we're probably stacking up some questions.
We got a bunch of questions, and I just want to acknowledge our fearless leader, Brian Shand, who was the producer essentially for this. unbelievable job. So many meetings, so much preparation to have this come across the way it did. So a shout out to Brian, who happens to have our first question here. Oh,
and one thing I wanted to say is that one of the things I love about working with Brian is that he's so calm. It's always like this calmness. Like no matter what we're doing, like, okay, we're going to do this all in 2 weeks and this is what it's going to look like. And it's like, okay, now we're going to do, like, it's just like, and it's just this, and during it, it's like you're talking to NASA, which makes production so much more enjoyable. And so just really
it's fantastic. Awesome. It's like, okay, this thing is on fire. Brian's like, okay, so what you need to do is you need to go over here. It's like, okay, I'm fine.
Try to find something that you can put it out with.
I was freaked out. Now I'm calm.
Yeah, exactly.
Why did this happen? So, Mitch, take us away into our first question.
Yeah, if Brian Shand was here from Sydney, Australia, he would read it more like, who is our target audience for these types of productions, and how can we better serve them?
Tlalak's going to start us off.
So, I think, having never been to Cinegear myself, or to NAB or to, the only real conventions that I've ever been to was USITT because it was part of my more direct vertical, right? It was about theater. And so I think the target audience are people who don't know what might be there for them. And that's exciting to me, is to be able to sort of show people more of what might be available for what they're doing.
Alex?
Yeah, when we go to these events, I thought about this for years because I've been covering these events for 20 years in some way, shape, or form. And when we go to these events, it's all encompassing. You're there in the morning, you're there all day, you're walking around, you're absorbed by it. Our goal down the road is to get to that point where someone could, if they wanted to, sit down at 8 a.m. and there's 12 hours of content. Like when you're talking about what we're trying to do and how to better serve them, there's interviews and we're talking and we're jumping from booth to booth and we're trying to talk about what the main trends are. And we're going to, we're showing you maybe, hundreds of booths eventually over like a 4-day event. And, and all of that we're trying to get to. Right now we're doing this with, no budget and no one knows who we are. And so we kind of are scrapping, with what we're doing. Each one of these gets better and better because of the great work the team's doing. We're starting to figure some of those things out. And so I think that, but our goal really, when I think about these, our target audience are people like us that are not able to go, and how do we build a conduit for them so that they, for the many people who didn't have time, didn't have a visa, didn't have the budget, didn't have, all those things. How do we make these events more accessible to them and have them at least see? Right now, it's how do we have them see at least a smattering of it? And the goal down the road is to have them feel like we're almost there, and you'll see us, we're playing around with in the HDR 360. You're going to there's going to be some point where if you put a headset on, you'll be able to, wander around with us and see those things as well. So there's a lot of different things that we'll probably work on over time.
Courtney?
Yeah, I think the target audience is different for the different shows. Obviously, that NAB's target audience is more television production, live television production. So you get television cameras, you get audio manufacturers of wireless equipment, et cetera. Whereas Cinegear is geared mostly for theatrical film production, or what used to be film production, but theatrical movie production. So you get the expensive cranes and camera support and grip and electric equipment that's used on motion picture sets versus live television or sports television, et cetera. I was kind of disappointed in that this year at Cinegear really rarely has a lot of audio equipment at it. There was only one audio manufacturer that I think we saw at Cinegear, which was Deity. And we didn't see Sound Devices. We didn't see any of the other major manufacturers of film sound equipment. So I was kind of disappointed there. And what used to be, and they stopped doing it because the shows got so expensive, but the sound rental houses, professional sound rental houses and camera rental houses used to have booths. I think B&H had one at Cinegear and they have one at NAB, but beyond them, a lot of the smaller rental houses have dropped out of those conventions because the booth space has just gotten to be so expensive. Because that was a nice place you could go to and see a variety of different manufacturers' equipment in a single booth, and you could talk to somebody about the latest, audio recorder, et cetera, that came out without having to go to the manufacturer's booth. If they were even there. So I kind of missed that. And when we go to SIGGRAPH, of course, it's going to be all about graphics and graphic computers and 3D modeling, et cetera. So different audience for each individual trade show. So, we'll have to make sure we advertise that and cater to the audience that is, required for that particular show.
Ronnie.
What I found intriguing with this show was that we had time to look at all the smaller vendors or more specialized vendors, and not only go with the flow with the big brands and the big booths. And this was shown the day before when we did the walkthrough. There was a lot of interest in looking at specialized things, and so. This is something that we should really be aware of and take to notice when we are going to the other shows as well. It seems that people are very interested in those kind of special things.
Alex, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, I think that when it's a big company, like for instance, Blackmagic didn't release anything new. They were at Cinegear to answer questions and interact with folks, but there's no reason for us to cover something that there's nothing new. For us, the smaller booths are more interesting to do new because no one ever sees them. So we can go to all of those and show things because they're not as widely acknowledged. And so I think it's interesting. I also, I think of worth slinging bits against the screen, and to me, everything that you're seeing us cover are different versions of that. SIGGRAPH or Cinegear or NAB or IBC. They're all slinging bits slinging little bits of light at a screen, and so we're not. I think that we may still experiment with other things. We're going to experiment with a football game over the weekend, and so we're going to experiment with other coverage and other things to do. But our main focus of what we're going to do is people that are interested in, these anything that has to do with graphics or video or audio. By the way, I think that the audio issue that really showed up was that when AES bonded with NAB. And then you have NAM in the morning, in the spring. I think it just took up a lot of energy. All the sound folks said, well, that's the easiest way for us to get to everybody.
Mitchell?
The other thing that I saw at Cinegear that was neat, again, I was just a viewer like anybody else, was the authenticity of some of the people that had booths. There's one gentleman that was showing off a camera gimbal with Courtney that could turn 360 and get all kinds of crazy. I mean, that is a breakthrough way to shoot something that didn't exist before, and it came from probably somebody that worked on films and just had this wherewithal to create the rig. It seemed very authentic to me and cutting edge because it wasn't a big name company.
Let's go to the next question.
Liberty White from Atlanta, Georgia. The production around Cinegear gave us another Office Hours global live show design. I enjoyed the intimacy of it. What was the motivation? Show size, crew, or trying something new?
Start with Locke.
I think a lot of times, there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen in our group. And so the motivations are different. And also the technology and equipment is different with wherever a particular show may be. You may have a bunch of people that have XYZ, and then on another show you have a whole different set of people that have a whole different set of equipment. Like IBC was a whole different set of equipment, different people, different ways of thinking. So I think one of the things that's beautiful about this is that it's not going to be the same every time. Maybe it'll be more the same every time as we go forward, but there's something about the fact that we're coming together and pulling from a group of folks when it comes to work, equipment, and thoughts about a particular production.
Alex.
Yeah, and I think that we're going to be experimenting a lot for the rest of the year. So every show is going to be pretty different than the last show before it. And I think that one of the things that we're trying to do is find the things. Most people don't take the chances to do that because they've got a bunch of sponsors and they have to do a bunch of things, and they're trying to minimize the impact of it on of what it takes to do. And we're throwing lots of people at it, and like no one's throwing the kind of numbers of people and gear and everything else that we are into the coverage of these what would be considered generally a smaller show. This isn't like a car show or something. And so I think that we're trying to reinvent it. And reinventing it, part of it is to with no budget, other than what people are willing to put in. But I think that we're experimenting with that, and you're going to continue to see that experimentation. We've got some plans. I got some ideas for NAB. I'm trying to see not NAB, but a SIGGRAPH, to take it another step forward, and then we'll see where we go with that. But I think that it's really figuring it out, and I think you'll see us splatting things against the wall for the rest of the year, and then it'll start to settle. So in 2024, I think we'll start to settle on this is a format we like, because we also have to prove ourselves. We have to show people, hey, this is what we're doing, because that's easier for us to get gear and to get eventually sponsorships and so on and so forth. We have to prove that we can actually execute it, and so we're getting closer. We're doing better content that way, and so I think that's also a big piece of it to kind of build up that process. But I think by 2025 is when, I think will be the thing at most of these events, the coverage that people want to be part of.
Courtney.
Yeah, I think the logistics, the ahead of time planning that went into this, into Cinegear was great. And Kirsten, thanks for coming up with that great presentation of how everything worked and the logistics involved in getting everything to the live show day. That worked pretty well, I think. The thing we were flummoxed with is on the pre-shoot day, where we were all wandering around with our cell phones, is that when you're on a soundstage, cell phone coverage is not very good if you've just got a single carrier, and each person wandering around has a different phone cell carrier. So some were stuttery, some were good. It's kind of a hit or miss on the opening day, on the pre-show day. But on the show day, the LiveU worked gangbusters for us, and it came out great. And being able to think on your feet, as much as you plan and plan everything out, then some little missing cable, or like Alex said, the lens that he chose was not the best one. We have to switch midstream. Right before the show, we're switching to a different camera. So that kind of created a different problems in the field with, okay, we need different connectors. Oh, we need a different monitor. We need this and that. But being able to come up with the things in the field from the field crew that just happened to have the things with us that they needed, or knew where to get the things that we needed to make it happen at the last minute, was really spoke to the competence of the field crew that we had there.
Yeah, the serendipity of it was good. Tlaloc went out and found the cables, and Jesse had another camera, and there was a bunch of things that all just kind of clumped together there that weren't well.
Did you have another thought, or is that you're done? Okay, let's move on to the next question.
Here's Brian Shan from Sydney, Australia, asking, what field kit has been of value in these productions, and which products would you like to try out for future shows?
Tlaloc's going to help us start out.
So, after having utilized my 6K for so long with plugged into AC power, and then noticing that its onboard battery dies in maybe 10 minutes, I was wondering, how are these cameras used? So for this project, I purchased a V-mount system, and I'm really excited that I have it. It's becoming a really useful thing for me in multiple ways. I'm actually running because I'm having problems with the power supply for my ATEM. So I'm running my ATEM right now off of one of my V-mount batteries. And it's just a super powerful way to work. And I think I'm going to probably expand that part of my kit. So that's a big one for me.
Alex?
Courtney's cart and the battery, the big battery at the bottom that supplied AC to a lot of our stuff. We would have never made it through the 4 hours without that big battery. So there's a bunch of things we learned really quickly, like, we're going to need to do that in the future. Obviously, the LiveU and the Electrosonics have done really well. The Scorpio has done well. I think that the V mount batteries have been great. The Teradeks have worked really really well. So all of the things that we're kind of coalescing around has been making a lot of this easier. I would love to in another environment to, the Electrosonics are great. I'd love to mix the Electrosonics, the mic plugs, with some of the sound devices transmitters to do for the ambisonic. So I'm going to see what we can do about that.
Mitchell?
I'm really interested in how we may change our rig depending on the show we do, like CGraph for graphics, or NAB AES this fall, where it's audio. Would there be any changes that you would need to make, maybe that would help support that particular show's spotlighted products?
Ronnie?
I think the ambisonic that Alex spoke about is something that I really expect to be evolving through these productions. Another thing is for the after hours, when we're just roaming around the area, I think looking more into the DJI Osmo Mobile, the OM5 or 6 or whatever, together with the Zoom could be a really good thing to have stabilized, really good pictures, and you go up against and the focus is working and everything is perfect. Audio is a problem then. So
let's go to the next question.
Next question in from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. Please describe the field team roles and how was the communication on the ground amongst that field team?
Tlaluk's going to help us start.
So I have to start by completely shouting out to Raj, who was essentially our how would you put it? Our leader on the ground, field producer on the ground, and he made me, I'm just going to speak for myself, feel comfortable at any moment that I didn't have to think or worry about where I was going. And he would point at a booth and I would walk over there. and when I leave, I was walking to the next one and try not to forget to get the mic from the interviewee. But I really appreciated that. Then we also had Joaquin, we had Jesse, we had, and both of those fellows did camera work. And then we had Max. Max helped us carrying a variety of things and helped us keep people out of the camera shot, and was really, really clutch in those ways, and was really excited and happy to be there. I felt like my role was, I was uncomfortable with the role in front of the camera, and it was new to me, and that was a good thing. But I am comfortable with being the kind of person that is like, okay, what needs to be done? And so I felt like that was where I also was part of the process, is, putting things together, carrying things, making sure I could go find cables. I'm really good at driving around LA, as it turns out. But anyway, so I just thought it was pretty cohesive in that way, and it was really a lot of fun.
That's a resume, Adam. I'm really good at driving around LA. Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, most of our communications amongst the ground crew was just talking to each other because we're standing, within a few feet of each other. We did have comms, and we did use Unity comms for the presenters, Tlaluk and myself, so we could hear the program feed of Bill from the Zoom call. But we could not hear, because of mix minus coming back to us, we couldn't hear ourselves or the person that we're interviewing in our comms. So we just had to be close enough to them, and we could only use comms in one ear, because if we put comms in both ears, we wouldn't be able to hear the person we're interviewing, because their feed is not coming back to us. So that was slightly problematic, but I think it worked out okay.
Well, we would have heard each other. We would have heard ourselves back like a half a second later. It would have been rough.
Exactly. The delay, mix minus had to be in there because they couldn't feed program back to us. But locally, what we might have in the future is a local Comtech that comes out of the Scorpio or whatever we're using for audio mixer, so that we hear the mix that's going up to them, mixed in with our comms coming back from them, which doesn't have any of the program audio in it. So we could hear how I could hear when I have the mic too low without having Mickey shout through a third person, hold the mic closer, Courtney. So, communication like that would be helpful without interrupting, what we're listening to. And so that worked pretty well. I think feeding the program audio back to us so that we could hear the handoffs was great, so that we didn't have to have a third person pointing to us when we were on, et cetera. We knew when we were on, and we could take the handoff and give the handoff back to Bill or Grant, whoever was hosting at that moment in time. The other thing I wanted to say on the previous question, but unfortunately it was locked, the thing that I think was a problem too is the camera on a monopod was great on a show like this because you could move amongst the crowd. It was kind of heavy to hold, and the poor camera operator, I really felt for, because it couldn't stand up on its own. And unfortunately, the little legs at the bottom were really not strong enough to hold that thing up without fear of it falling over. So you never had a free hand. The camera operator always had to have his hand on that camera for 7 hours, or however long we were on. So that was kind of a problem. You couldn't relax, get a drink of water or something. If you had to get something out of your bag, you had to hand it off to somebody else, and they had to hold it. So having something that we could lock the camera into when we're not shooting would have been a handy thing to have, so that the camera operator could relax for a few seconds.
And I think we could rig the cart to do that. Just have something.
We could rig a holder on the cart to drop it onto, so that you could walk away from it, or when we're moving from place to place, we can move as a cohesive band of brothers.
Yeah. Let's go to the next question.
From Tlaloc Lopez Waterman in Brevard, North Carolina. Bill, could you report how it felt to be both in the field and on the panel?
Yeah, it was a real help. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop to another, to a Cinegear shot here. One of the small pieces of equipment we got to look at there while I talk you through a little of this, and real quick. It was hugely important to me to be oriented, to get a sense of the host show. When I was hosting the next day, kind of knowing where to go out, where people were, gave me more things to talk about when it was time to stretch a little bit. In the back end, always when we're kind of inventing this, we don't have things specifically set up so that we know exactly where we're going next. And we have to be very flexible about all the things that are happening. So there was a good little bit of padding when I would get in my ear from Laura, 10 more seconds and then we've got to go out, and I'd have to stretch a little. That, having been there the day before and knowing what was happening, to see things like you're seeing right now, and to know what area we in, what are the trends of the show, I just found that very comforting, because I had more things to talk about. And then just the whole back end team doing their amazing job of keeping us oriented. The communications, it was so critical. Having Laura there, having Brian in the background, knowing that you were never entirely alone, that was a huge part of being able to pull anything like this off. It is truly a teamwork effort, and I'm just gobsmacked that I get to work with such people day in and day out. Let's go on to the next question.
Laura Thompson in Beaumont, Texas, asking, this is the first time that we've locked questions and used the system as a strictly voting queue during the Friday and after hours. Was this successful, or did it contribute to less questions on Saturday?
Tlaloc, how did it feel to you?
It felt a little bit like the question flow was low. And I was wishing for there to be more questions from the audience so that I could tell what they were interested in, instead of just doing what I was interested in, which is what I ended up doing. But so I think maybe if there's a mix between those two methodologies, that would probably be a good way to go.
Yeah, I felt a little bit the same thing. I remember from the host seat, it was, can we get something in from this section on the left? We're also, and then get it out to the field. And there seemed like a little bit of delay, but these are things we'll work out as time goes along. It was experimental. Let's go to the next question.
From Kenny Hampton in Greenville, Illinois. Regarding audio, did you use any noise assist tech to control the background noise?
Alex, help us out.
Oh, we just use SM58s. So they have a lot of off-axis rejection. I mean, the challenge with SM58s is that you really have to hold them up. So people moved them down, it was problematic. But if they hold them up to their mouth, it cuts out everything else.
Let's go to the next question.
Tlaloc Lopez Waterman and Brevard, North Carolina. Alex, is there a way of getting into after hours that is supported by more technology beyond our phones?
Yeah,
Alex?
I mean, we're working on it. There's the problem with bonding in WebRTC is that the frames get reordered, and so things break up, and there's a lot of issues. So bonded cellular doesn't really work. What we really need to do is have, Wi-Fi. Like the problem is Wi-Fi signals, but that are with APs, and those will break up, but they'll break up a lot less than the cellular. And then potentially a place, again, what we're working on for NAB is trying to find it. See, we try to do this for Cinegear, but they just wanted us to pay for a booth, which I couldn't afford at this time. But having a home plate, so we're working on that for SIGGRAPH, of give us a booth space that we can have that people can come to. Not everybody can do that, but some people can. So the idea is to break it up where we have really clean feeds from that one area. Another thing that we could be doing with the Teradeks is if we get a hard line into SIGGRAPH, for instance, we can have zero latency from the Teradeks back to a transmitter that goes into. So then we're able to now have that real time. The LiveU can get very good, and we could definitely use the LiveU and insert it into it, and we would just let it break up a little bit by going down to like half a second. So you could interact with someone on the LiveU. If we turn it down, it just won't be as clean as we do with our current one. So, but it would be probably much better than what we're getting with cellular phones. And so I think that, and that's a good, we'll see things the day before too. So I expect us to use the LiveU a lot more during SIGGRAPH. During the after hours, that'll be one of the cameras that we roam around with.
Tlaloc?
Yeah, and I thought your point, I think it was Ronnie who said about having some sort of gimbal process, because I did hear some comments about being a little seasick from some of the walking. And
especially low frame rate.
Yeah, with low frame rate. So I think that would be a really good addition for the after hours. And I do think we should put a lot of sort of crowd effort into making the after hours portions of these coverages much better, because I think there's something there.
Let's go to the next question.
From Robert Linkrum from Belmont Shore, California. Alex, have you mentioned getting right angle XLRs for your Scorpio? Are the right angle XLRs simple plugins? Can you give us some detail?
Yeah, I ran out to find them. I ran out for a second while everyone was answering questions. This is it. It's just a really short little, it's a right angle that's going to pop in. And I realized that now that I popped it up, I think I have the, anyway, so this is going to pop in, and then we have the output here. So, which I think is actually, I think I might have gotten backward ones, which is interesting. It's like I just literally pulled it out of the bag, and I think they're backwards. But anyway, but the point is that they're little right angle that's here, that you pop it in. So that's how that works.
Anybody real quick, Mitchell?
Yeah, you can also buy them where they can reverse their direction on the right angle.
Well, you don't want to, anyway.
Courtney, real quick.
Yeah, if you go to Sweetwater, you can see these that are $45 for a 3-footer with they're low profile, so they don't have the strain relief coming out the side, and you can rotate the angle that the cable comes out depending upon where in the bag it's going to sit.
Ronnie, real quick.
Yeah, like it's all already been said. The no trick ones can be turned, and you decide what angle it is.
Let's get to the next question.
Jesse Schwartz, Los Angeles, asking, I'd love to see some time lapse from Cinegear streets of New York. Can Jesse screen share and show us some?
Jesse, did you get any time lapse?
I thought you guys would never ask. Thank you. So yes, I did. Do you see the screen?
Yeah, we do. You're all set.
All right. This is from Insta360 X3 on a 10-foot selfie, Paul.
So for those of you who've never been to Cinegear, to the Paramount lot, the entire back lot around all the gigantic enclosed studios are these facades that look like parts of New York or other big cities from the East. So it makes Cinegear pretty unique, is that all the booths are set up around these huge facades.
So both of these were shot with one frame every 4 seconds. So I probably left the selfie pole with the camera there for about an hour for each of those 20-second videos. The funny thing was, Alex asked, and it was a good question. He's like, you really feel safe leaving your camera there unattended for an hour? I'm like, hey, it's the streets in New York. What could go wrong?
Exactly.
But my
exactly
rationale,
the same population.
My rationale was it was right next to about $100,000 Ari that my little $500 camera was not going to be as tempting. So it survived.
Alex, I'm going to let you make the call. Should we go a little bit over? Or do you want me to close out on time?
We can go a little
Yeah,
over.
I think it's a kind of a big day.
Yeah, we'll go quickly.
All right, let's get to the next question.
Michael Flotron from Portland, Oregon. I'm currently looking at bonding solutions to cover a road mile in a downtown area. Would you consider the LiveU as the best solution for this, or are there other practical options with a medium budget?
Right. Alex seems to feel like the LiveU was a huge ad for us.
There are other, so Keenan Campbell can come on and talk about his solution, which is there. So there are other solutions that are really, really great. So so I think that there are some bonded solutions, but as far as a video, I want video to go in and I want video to come out somewhere else. The LiveU is the easiest one to use. If you're looking for overall IP coverage, there's a lot of other options. And really the thing about the LiveU is, remember that you can take you can hook a Starlink to it. So you can have a LiveU getting its Ethernet from a Starlink. And then that's going to really stabilize that a lot. Especially if you're at a parade, the LiveU still may break down because there'll be too many people using the cellular points. But that mixture is, I think, probably the most effective.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael, was there a master control room or similar central control point similar to Super Saturday?
Courtney?
Yeah, Alex was our man behind the curtain because he knew how the LiveU all worked and how to boot it and reboot it, and also all the Scorpio. So he was our A1 and our video engineer in the field. And he was listening on headphones to the microphone, so he knew when we were getting hits on the audio. And he was the man behind the curtain for almost everything and didn't appear on camera because we couldn't lose him from his important position in controlling everything that was going back to, of course, the real master control in, where was it? Where were we coming? Australia? Or, well, whoever was controlling.
Oh, yeah.
Whoever was switching back at headquarters.
Alex, the final.
Yeah, the problem was that at the last minute, the morning of the event, at 6 a.m. in the morning when we were getting set up, I made a right turn on what I wanted to do with the kit. I was frustrated by a couple pieces of what we were doing, and I felt like we needed to make again, and I wouldn't do this in a normal job, but I felt like it'll greatly improve the quality of the show, and we just don't have what we need to do X, Y, and Z. And so I made that shift, but that meant that I pieced it all together. I put the whole thing together, and trying to hand it off to someone else, I felt like it would take half the day, because I knew where all the pieces were going, and I just didn't feel like I could hand it off quickly enough to somebody else, and I better just manage it. So that's how I started pushing the cart, which was fine. It was great. I thought that Tlaloc and Courtney did a great job.
Our last question.
Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana, asking, if you've never been to Cinegear before, do you now want to go every year?
Javier, how do you feel?
Totally. And it's not only because I felt like sitting in the commentator's booth after being inside the field for the NAB, but also, as I said when we were in the transmission, I think this is the safari for the zoo that are all the other conferences. And I love backlot tours and studio tours, so I'll definitely be there next time.
Tlaloc?
Yeah, my budget is not thanking me, but yeah, I'm definitely going back.
That's the problem. You see so many things you want. Alex, wrap it up.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to go more often. I had taken some time off, and I think I just forgot how cool it is. But I think it's not just that I forgot how cool it was. It's gotten way cooler. Like it is just the coolest, the most eye candy for production that happens, I think, pretty much anywhere in the world. As far as denseness, that every booth is like, oh, I really need to spend some time here. This looks really cool. So I think it's just a great conference. I get a little tired of the sun, but I do think that it's an amazing conference.
Courtney?
Yeah, I've been going every year for many years, and Lately, you know, I kind of dropped off for a couple of years because the sun is just a killer. And when I find a good sunscreen that doesn't make me look like Pennywise the Clown, I'll come back.
Yeah, not zinc oxide, I'm afraid. Yeah, I would go back and do this again. Really quickly. Last shot that I'll show you. This, you probably saw this before. You saw the crane, but look at that trailer behind it. That was the most amazing production trailer I have ever seen. Not only does it have all the standard grip gear, not only does it have a ton of lighting, but there's actually a conference room on the second floor of this truck that people can have a meeting after you're out on location or something like that. You just don't get to see these kind of things anywhere else other than a show like Cinegear. So it's just fabulous.
Had a grip cappuccino room in it, I think it did.
That's right. It's just amazing to see what the people with serious budgets for these multi-million, $100 million movies have available to them. All right. Thank you, everybody who participated in today's coverage. We had a great time at Cinegear. We will be back, let's see, tomorrow, how office hours works. So if you're interested in behind the scenes of how we put the show together every day, our next update takes place on tomorrow's show. Saturday, normally education. And I think while school's out, we're pivoting to a focus on accessibility. Is that correct, Alex? And can you tell us a little bit about what's going to be happening?
Yeah, so we're going to start off with etiquette and talk about it. We're really taking some big strides there. So we're going to be doing both. I'll be on the show with a lot of new faces talking about accessibility. Laura is going to be part of that, and quite a few other people. You're going to see us also experiment on the YouTube stream with producing a ASL. We've partnered with a group to basically put ASL into the system, and you'll see some more information about that. And so we'll be doing that for the next 7 weeks. We'll be talking about accessibility for the next 7 weeks. Expect it to be a little, you get to see the beginnings of this. And when we look back on it a year from now, we'll be like, wow, this seemed really complicated, but we're going to, and I'd highly encourage other folks from the panels that we've had in the past to jump on with us and be part of the little ride that we're going to take here. But we're looking at, over the next 7 weeks, we're going to look at how many accessibility features we can pack into a show. So it's kind of a summer project. It will create some chaos, we expect, because we've never really done it, and we're going to have both, people using ASL as panelists as well as ASL as an output. And so there's a lot of us figuring out what does that look like and how does that work and everything else. And not many people do this on a regular basis. And we're going to try to move it to some version of mastery in 7 weeks. And so it should be a really, really interesting ride.
Very exciting to come. Our huge thanks to everybody involved in this, all the people who are at Cinegear, and just all the people who are producers on this show, all of you who ask questions. The show literally can't happen without your participation, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. The panelists who bring expertise every day to office hours and answer all of your questions. Thank you to all the panelists today and every other day who show up to do this. And of course, the crew in the back end. It's great to see Kirsten's face here because we see people like her every day gathering together to make this show possible. Most of the time, they don't end up on the show per se, but they are mission critical to bringing this to you. Thank you all. After Hours takes off right now, and we will see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching.
Should have left a string of bananas behind us.
Bananas. Oh, I miss bananas. I knew we were late.
587 million. You didn't just miss one banana. You missed 587 million bananas for scale. Millions and millions. So much potassium.
3 times around the earth. Yeah. That would leave some waste behind.
Yeah, so many bananas. But it's better than when we forget to say million. It's just 587 million. You're like, those are giant bananas. It's like bananas the size of Nebraska. Giant. I need to go to Midjourney and see if